Welcome to this core session entitled Conducting Research with Virtual Reality in the Social Sciences. This time our session is dedicated to carrying out research with emerging technologies in the social sciences. In particular, our speakers will present a series of breakthrough research projects conducting using virtual reality. Our first speaker today is Wolf-Gero Lange from Radboud University in the Netherlands. Welcome, Gero. Gero is a assistant professor at, as I said, Radboud University. Originally, he was trained in biological psychology, but has since specialized in the experimental exploration of cognitive and behavioral aspects of social anxiety. His research addresses cognitive biases, automatic behaviors such as impulsive approach and avoidance, prosocial behaviors such as mimicry, and subtle behaviors such as body sway and interpersonal space in social interactions. Gero will present Speak Up Kids, Fear of Public Speaking Tackled by the Roots. Welcome, and whenever you want, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Laura, also for putting this together. It's a pleasure to be here. And unfortunately, I have to leave early, but since there's a recording, I'll be able to watch the other talks afterwards. So I'm really looking forward to hear what Domna and Tania have to talk about. Besides, behind me, you see like a very prototypical cliche kind of background for the Netherlands. And yes, it is a lot of a cliche, much of a cliche, but nevertheless, if I go into my backyard, I do see a windmill. So in that sense, and it's a photo actually from that windmill. So it's not that cliche anyway, a little bit. Okay, let's share my screen now and see, okay, if it works out fine. Okay, yeah, I come here to talk to you guys about a very cool project that I've conducting together with my colleague publle. And let's see if I can move a little bit. I want to see some faces. Okay. And first, of course, we need a couple of concepts to be explained before before I can explain what we've actually been doing with virtual reality. So it is about fear of public speaking. Now, fear of public speaking is a specific form of social anxiety or social anxiety disorder, if it is getting even worse. And the core fear is the fear of negative evaluation. With regard to fear of public speaking, and probably a lot of you are in a way familiar with that, so you can think of the fear to screw up, to black out, to be laughed at, or to be laughed about, I mean, to tell something stupid and that people just don't take you serious anymore, or to be boring. Those kind of fears are typically the fears that show up in people that are afraid of public speaking. If we talk about the prevalence of social fears, and especially fear of public speaking, you see that about 16 to 40% of the adult population believe or do say that they have, well, an elevated level of fear when they're in a public speaking situation. Although maybe not clinical, but they themselves subjectively think that they are tremendously anxious in such situations. And if you look at the population of people with an actual diagnosis of social anxiety disorder, it's about 89% that do suffer from this specific form. So as you can see, it's quite, yeah, it's quite a broad spread phenomenon. And it has quite some consequences, not only because it typically becomes chronic if you do not treat it, but there also go a lot of things along with the fear of public speaking. So typically people also suffer from other anxiety disorders. You can think, for example, of panic disorder. People suffer from depression. And actually the most important part here, which people do not realize that much, is that you can get quite stuck in your education, in your professional life, yeah, and sometimes with this specific fear, not so often in your social life. And people that do fear public speaking very much, they actually choose jobs that may, where they think that they don't have to present in public. So they may actually take jobs that they don't like that much, just because then at least they can be sure not to be able, or not where it is not necessary to present before an audience. What we do know now so far about the fear of public speaking is that most of it is actually, or starts in childhood and early childhood. And there are so many different factors actually that could play a role here. It's a very heterogeneous condition. So in general, if you have a anxious predisposition, if you tend to be anxious very easily, then, well, there are also some chances that you might develop fear of public speaking. But it can also be like an educational system, maybe demanding a lot of presentations, presentation skills, or just putting a lot of pressure on that particular part can play a role. But it can also be negative experiences. So even though if you do not present, or maybe were not anxious in the first place, but then somebody laughs while you're giving a presentation, even though maybe not necessarily about you, or that you have like a very pedagogically not so well-trained teacher who just kind of puts you down in front of the whole group, may also be a negative experiences triggering fear of public speaking. But you can also see different examples. It must not necessarily be you yourself that experiences something negative, but it can also be somebody else. And well, it can also just be the fact that you need to perform, you know, and that you get grades for it can also already trigger the fear. And of course, the whole more general period of puberty, in which you become more aware of yourself, of your own appearance, of how come you come across, in which the meaning, not the meaning, the opinion of your peers becomes more and more important. Those can also be phases in which public speaking fears can be triggered. And I won't bore you much with this model here on the right. It's just a very generic model. So typically it starts with negative thoughts about how you perform, how you want to perform, or what you believe that others expect of you, which of course trigger negative emotions. And typically people that are afraid of something, not even only public speaking, they start avoiding, of course. And if you avoid, then you do not have the chance to build up positive experiences. And in parallel to that, you probably might have something, panic attacks in the most extreme case, but also you might be sweating, you might be trembling, or you might be blushing. And that again triggers becoming aware of those things may also trigger negative thoughts or make them even worse for the next round to go. If you want to get rid of it, I mean, we do know quite a lot about anxiety disorders, and there's nothing much different with fear of public speaking. So exposure is actually the core mechanism in order to defeat any anxiety, basically. And the thing is, face what you dread. So if you are afraid of something, you have to repeatedly confront that thing. And that gives your body to get habituated actually to the stimulus, to learn more or less implicitly that the stimulus is not dangerous. And then at a certain point, all the physiological reactivity will subside. What also helps, of course, is just to develop a routine by practicing in this particular case. So you get more routine in speaking fluently and maybe building in jokes in your speech, or how to build up the talk and so on. And the words come easier. So those kind of things will, of course, also help to make public speaking less fear evoking. And then, of course, you also develop, you have the chance to get some positive experiences. Some positive feedback, people being interested in what you talk about, people asking important questions and so on. But of course, there's a drawback. Oh, okay, sorry, one step back. So the thing that we need to do is practice, practice, practice. But there's a drawback, of course. And the bottleneck is that how do you get an audience so often? Okay, I mean, you have like, let's say, okay, you have like your aunts, uncles, family, whatever, but they simply don't want to listen over and over and over again to your talk. Okay, and your friends don't either. You also want to practice in a safe environment, but if you have like a lot of different people, well, maybe some people may get bored after they've heard your talk for the 5th time, so they may be yawning, and then that seems like negative feedback. And you also want different audiences to practice with. So that was the idea that we had when we said, okay, well, maybe we need to come up with something that simulates all this in one go. And then we started to develop the speak app. So what we did first was we had like a 360-degree camera. We went to a Dutch elementary school and we had classes between in the age of 6 and 13, between the age of 6 and 13. And they would actually be listening to an age-appropriate podcast while they just sat in the room and listened. And then we recorded them. And then the lower classes, in the smaller kids, we had like a circular setup, which is very typical in that where you just talk about the vacation, about your last weekend, about your favorite stuffed animal, whatever. And in the older classes, you would have more like this sitting islands where you would just sit around and listen and converse in class. At least that's very typical in the Netherlands. And ideally, when the app is done, you would get the option to download it in whatever app store you prefer on whatever platform, at least for Android and Apple, that is. And you could actually use a very cheap cardboard VR holder like this one, which costs no more than €5. And you put your mobile phone in that, and then you could actually already have a virtual reality experience. Because in 360-degree movies, you can just basically move around and look around in the environment, and it experiences as if you are actually in the room. So here, I'll let you show a short video here, a screen recording, which is a little bit rough, but I think you will get the idea. We start off with a tutorial in that app so that the children do not have to read all the things. Okay, so you start here. I hope you can hear the sound when it starts. Okay, so here you have to put the phone in the cardboard holder. Okay, and at a certain point.
Welcome to the speech training app. In front of your eyes, you see the gaze point. This is your interactive selection tool. Let's try it out. Click on the start button to continue. Good job. You are standing in the classroom. You can view your notes by selecting the Notes button. You can slide through the notes using the arrows. You can hide your notes every time by clicking on the close icon. Now look at your left. The timer will show you the current presentation time left. Please click on the menu button.
Okay, and there my PowerPoint left me as I had predicted, so I'll start the whole thing up again. I'm sorry for that. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's begin. Here somewhere, yes. So I need to find the Zoom here. Okay, so I guess we're somewhere here.
The home button will immediately finish the presentation and switch to the main menu. Click on the home button to finish the tutorial. Well done. Your tutorial was successful.
So we came up with the idea with the tutorial just to make it easier so that the kids do not have to read pages and pages of text, instruction text. It's not finalized yet, but I think you pretty much get the idea. And then you can also see now how the speech training, oh no, this is a tutorial again, move on, okay. So you have a selection of the grade. Let's see, stop here. You can select the grade that you want to see. So depending on your own age group, you can upload notes if you want to, and then you can start. You can even see an empty room, and you can see a full room if you want to practice with that. And you can also set a timer. So those are the things that you'll see now. Okay, so there you need to take out the cell phone off the holder, otherwise you cannot upload the notes. When uploading the notes, you simply take a picture of whatever notes you have, or more than one pictures if you want more slides. Then you put it back in the cardboard holder, and then you can then you choose a class. Okay. Okay, then you can choose a class here. Okay, you choose the full classroom and you choose the timing that you want to have, and then the presentation starts. And here you see the timer on the left here, and you can also stop the group, but it doesn't make much sense, so we'll get that out. And then basically you should just see the kids. Yeah, it's a little bit rough, but you see the kids moving, and this is loop, so the work can move just endlessly, you know, and you have the chance to do your presentation here. And once the timer is done, which you'll see in a couple of seconds, then you get again a little applause and some feedback. So just to give you some idea of interactiveness, which of course is a little bit restricted in such a setup. Okay. So just a quick thing. We already tested the app in a quantitative approach. So we had a prototype, and there we investigated whether the speak app would actually reduce social or fear of public speaking, and it did. So you can look that up. But now we are also busy with some qualitative approach, because we actually need to know whether the app in its current form is actually is user-friendly, if kids in the different age groups know how to use it, would use it, what they would improve, and so on. So this project actually also for the future delivers a whole lot of possibilities for research. You could use it actually for the treatment of social speak anxiety. Again, you could just use it in a normal setting, whether it would reduce speak anxiety in a normal school class setting, or you could also, again, look at how far people would use it and what way they will use it when it is finalized. And maybe have even a longitudinal study where you say, okay, and how far does it actually prevent speak anxiety from developing when some people will use it and others won't use the app. So I think I need to get to an end pretty soon. So to sum things up, speak anxiety is a very common phenomenon, and it often develops in childhood. And we believe that with the Speak app, we've developed a potentially useful tool to prevent fear of public speaking, actually at its roots. But that, of course, still needs to be investigated. And maybe it even may be serving as an aid for treatment. Before I close, I have to give special thanks to Radboud Center of Social Sciences, who financed our app and project, and to Motion and Strategy, who actually developed the app and implemented the videos and everything like that. So, if you have any questions left, speak up now or email me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gero. That was a very, very interesting project. I wish you all the best with it. And if anyone in the audience has any questions, just feel free to open your mic and ask. Domna?
Yeah, taking time from others. Thank you. It was very interesting. Very quickly, I was wondering, because I see that you're doing it with kids, which is super cool, really interesting. Are you planning to follow up the same kids, I don't know, maybe over the years, to see how they will develop with respect to speaking Well,
No,
not
no, yeah, that's an excellent question. We would love to, but I mean, we were very happy that we at least had the chance to test them once. We had tried to do some qualitative project following them up like a couple months later and see, okay, how do you remember the app? What do you think now of it? Would you use it, and so on? But we couldn't get them together anymore. So at that point, we were just very happy that we at least could get the quantitative stuff done. And now, and this was also only a prototype of the app. So once the app is done, with all the features that we have, then we would love to have again such a project, and then test the full-blown app and also follow kids longer.
Nice. Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I have another one after Tania.
So it's a super interesting project, very exciting. So I understand you're going to do a full qualitative analysis of your data, but do you have a sneak peek into how the children perceive potential change in their anxiety and like just the usability of the app?
Well, with a prototype, we actually did, of course, try to find out what the kids thought, and well, actually, they found it very useful, and we also heard that parents found it very useful. And when we promoted just the project, we got a whole lot of responses from all kinds of people, teachers and parents and so on, saying, "Oh, this is so useful. Would be great if you can realize that." So we have good hope that people would actually be using it. And actually, a funny thing is, even like young elementary school teachers could actually use it, as a start off, to get used to standing in front of the kids, and practicing stuff. And it will all be for free, so the app won't cost anything. So I hope that also would give the whole thing a boost.
We have time for one more question. Maybe Domna, I think, had another question.
Yeah, if nobody else wants to, sorry, yeah, very quickly. Because you mentioned the different crowds at the beginning, are you also designing it to, so that one can also choose how harsh the audience is while you're giving the presentation, or is it all neutral so far?
Well, we had a whole lot of ideas what to do. We also want to have, like, I don't know how many different schools in there, so that you have all kind of the age group.
Okay.
If you have one age group, you would have like 10 classes to choose from. Also, right now, it's not very much diverse what we have, so we would have like more diverse classes. Maybe we also had the idea with and without the teacher in the room, but this is now the core concept, and yes, the volume could also be something to turn up or down, and maybe have something more background noise. We could also produce that, but for now we're just basically moving for the standard scenario rather than having all those extras in there. But that's definitely an option. Good idea.
Nice. Thanks.
Okay. As I said, then thank you very much. I really need to go now, and wish you all the luck with your presentations and watching them on video.
Thank you very much for being here with us today. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so now it's time to move to the next presenter, Domna Banakou. She will present motive moments in time in immersive virtual environments. Dr. Banakou is a postdoctoral researcher at the EventLab at the University of Barcelona and part-time lecturer at the Universitat Oberta de Catalunya. Dr. Banakou completed her PhD in clinical psychology and psychobiology at the University of Barcelona. She also holds a degree in computer graphics, vision, and imaging from University College London, and a bachelor's degree in computer science with a specialization in arts and humanities from the Ionian University in Greece. Her research focuses on transformations of the virtual bodily appearance inspired by body ownership illusions as studied in cognitive neuroscience, exploring the perceptual, behavioral, and higher level cognitive correlates of embodiment in VR. Domna, whenever you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara and Tania, for the introduction. I think you can see my presentation in full mode. So yeah, the content of the talk today is the project, the European project motive of the EventLab, which stands for Moments in Time in Immersive Virtual Environments. And the goal is to recreate famous events from the past so that we give people the experience and the perception that they are really there, thus addressing the presence concept in virtual reality, and also the perception that what is happening around them, the events that are taking place are actually real, and therefore, which refers to the plausibility illusion that we encounter in virtual reality experiences. And so to provide an application, there, I don't know if this is not moving forward. You don't see the next page, right?
No, we still see the title page.
Yeah, seems very strange. Like, well, let's see. If now, okay, so to provide an application, the research is focused around reconstructing famous rock concerts from the 70s and 80s and maybe early 90s. And for example, we have started with the Dire Straits concert that took place at Hammersmith Odeon in the early 80s in the UK. Further, a newer addition is the Eurovision from the late 60s, where Spain won, since we're conducting most of our research in Spain, and it is an event that many people attended, well, even there or so watched on TV. And so the more specific elements of the research involve an agent-based model where the environment is populated with thousands of agents who serve as our audience in these events, and whose behavior will be driven by the music that will be playing. And this model also embeds, as we say, the participant, the user, as a type of an agent, and the personality of the participant, but also for the virtual agents surrounding the participants and their emotional state can affect each other. And they can also affect the unfolding of the whole scenario of the concert in this case, or whatever other event we are talking about. Both personality, emotions, but also the actions that we might be taking during the unfolding of the scenario. And so, like I mentioned before, two of the main concepts, virtual reality, that of presence and plausibility, are to be addressed and measured within this platform. How much do participants feel like they are at the concert, or how much can they feel that they are attending the concert with another friend, for example, when they have when they're able to do it, and what it takes for them to feel that they are really there. And of course, another concept we are exploring is that of body ownership, since our participants will be having a body which they can view and they can experience from a first-person perspective when they're looking out, when they are inside the concert and they are interacting with those around them. And from what we know from previous literature of how body ownership illusions can affect our attitudes, our behaviors, and our cognition, and even actions within the virtual environment, we will be further addressing this concept of body ownership. And another concept is that of agency, specifically illusory agency, which we don't have much time to go through it today, but essentially, it has been proven before that we can attribute actions to ourselves that our virtual body performed, but not as directly. So based on these such previous findings, the question is whether illusory agency can improve motor learning, for example, with respect to a musical instrument. And last but not least, again, since the user is supposed to be able to get to the concert venue or wander around the concert venue and interact with other participants at the concert or other virtual agents, we will be exploring and studying multisensory principles of interaction with in virtual environments, navigation in virtual environments, and also simulator sickness, which is always a hot topic in virtual reality and what it takes to reduce it, at least for this part of the population who unfortunately cannot have such experiences in virtual reality due to this. And I'm going to show you a brief video of the research that has been going on so far with respect to building the concert scenario first. So one of the goals of the project is to be able to automatically reconstruct such events based on, for example, footage that we might have from this event in the past, and be able to build the virtual environment, including all characters, the action, in this case, the music that is taking place and so on, the performance, as in an automated way, so that we don't need to model everything by hand. If anybody's interested, there is a paper regarding part of the technical work that my colleagues have been doing at the EventLab that you can consult online. And this is an example of what it's not the current version of the scenario, it's one of the latest versions that we also used to do a first study. This is what it looks like, and I'm going to very briefly present you the outcomes of the study now. But that's essentially what participants, for the users, saw when they attended the virtual concert. So the user, now this is a bird's eye view of the concert to get a better idea of what the agents, these are automated agents in the concert, what it looks like, but the user is among the crowd that you can see here. Yeah, maybe you can also hear the music. If you are a fan of Dire Straits, you can really enjoy it. So in this this first study that we conducted online, we used this setup to really test whether participants felt like what they felt like they were in this concert in reality. And that was an online study that was done with students from different universities around the world. And usually we use questionnaires after these experiences, but apart from questionnaires, typical questionnaires addressing presence of possibilities, such as how much you felt like you were at the concert, or how much you felt like you were with others and you joined others in dancing and cheering and so on. Participants were asked to write down a short essay about their experience, concentrating on specific points. Other than the feeling of being at the concert, these included how much they followed the movements of the crowd around them. That was decided to also, apart from dancing, clap at the specific moments. That was the equivalent of the real audience clapping during this performance, or cheering throughout the concert, and so on. To concentrate on aspects that drew them out of the experience or into the experience, and any other comments that they wanted to write down. And we analyzed the results using sentiment analysis, by using the text as input. And some of the main findings, just highlighted here in bullets, included the following. Many participants reported that they sort of felt alone in the experience, because usually this is something that you tend to do with a loved one or a close friend or relative attending concerts. But of course, this is something that can be easily overcome, as we do have the setup to be able to join the concert with another person, whether you are physically located at the same space or, more interestingly, far from each other. So we had designed some of the characters to interact with the participant from time to time, but that really involved staring at the participant or looking towards the participant when you were looking at the virtual agent for a specific amount of time. Now, on one hand, that was reported to be a bit disturbing by participants being looked at, but I'm going to get back to this point later on, just in a little bit. So apart from the staring, the participants reported that they would love to be able to interact more with those around them, but also for those around them to interact more with the band. There was not so much communication between the band and the members of the audience. Now they reported on the lack of diversity of the crowd, which was designed for this specific experiment to be as such, but it was noticed. An important outcome that refers to plausibility and highlights how important it is to design virtual reality experiences properly was the fact that some of them who had been at similar concerts in the 80s in London reported that the clothing and the behavior of the virtual audience did not match that of a real concert back in the 80s. For example, the audience was not drinking beer and they were not smoking, and also the clothing was more modern, and so on. And of course, there were some other technical issues because the study ran remotely that need to be looked at, such as synchronization with respect to playing the musical instruments or the crowd, for example, clapping at the right moment, and so on. But the audio aspect was also quite important to them. And though we did have specialized audio, having going to the next level is equally important. So getting to these results, why such meta-analysis was important here, we wouldn't have been able to get these conclusions to have this outcome if we had only relied on questionnaires, as we just look at a scale. We don't really ask people to tell us what they really felt. For example, people reporting that they were disturbed, but the audience does require to be for high plausibility to exist, because if you really did not feel that this person was there and really staring at you, then you wouldn't report that you felt disturbed. So on one hand, you can have, for example, high presence. Imagine someone scoring very high on presence or very high in plausibility, but on the other hand, sentiment can be low for the same experience. So as a first step, this method proved to us quite useful for finding the key points that we need to improve the entire application, so that next time we give the users a much better experience and making presence and plausibility higher for them. And of course, on the title disappear, that's one case. You can attend the concert as part of the audience, but it's virtual reality. We can do whatever we want. So why not attend the concert as part of the band, or a member of the band, or maybe as one of the actual members of the band? And this is what the creepy image with my face on top of Mark Knopfler's body. That's the message that I wanted to convey. I can actually be him in virtual reality and play the guitar, play the drums, and so on. So eventually, the idea is to be able to build these events from the past and either give the people the experience to live through them for the first time, especially if it was something quite significant that they missed for any reason. They couldn't go, it was too far away, or they were not born, or given the chance to relive them if they want to, regardless of whether they have been there or not in the past. And if you have been there in the past, you probably went when you were quite young, and you have changed now, so we can give you the experience to relive it in your younger self and study how that affects your experience. And I'm going to stop there because I went over time. Thank you very much, and that's the EventLab. My colleagues are thanking you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Domna. That was a wonderful presentation, and it's a very exciting project. I think looking at the conclusions, I was just thinking like how complex and ambitious this project is. So I wish you all the best with that. And also, I think you said something very interesting, that sometimes we rely a lot on questionnaires only for our quantitative studies. And then hearing you, right, you realize that it's important to rely also on other methodologies that allows us to explore more deeply in the qualitative aspects of it. And so thank you very much for presenting these interesting initial findings. And now I'm going to ask if someone in the audience has questions, please just open your mic and ask directly to Domna.
Or feel free to write directly afterwards. Maybe you come up with something else later on.
Could I ask a quick question? I mean, so this is a big leap forward, but what would you see future applications of this technology that you have developed, maybe in terms of clinical psychology or more generally speaking, psychology?
I think that, you know, because it touches mostly on the entertainment side of it, and I know there are already quite a few applications. But because on the practical side of the application, the idea is, like I mentioned, to really do it automatic, so that you don't require a lot of you know, designers to go into stuff by hand, to do personalized experiences from people's past and put them in these experiences, you know, something that they loved, and then study behavior there that can have, I mean, so many possibilities depending on what each one wants to study. Experiences from the youth. Actually, we're using this application now. Gero has left, but we're using the same application to deliver public speech, and looking at this part as well. There are just so many possibilities, but personalized experiences would be the ultimate, let's say, goal.
Exciting.
Thank you very much. And now allow me to introduce Tania Johnston. She will present using virtual reality for the prevention and rehabilitation of intimate partner violence. Dr. Tania Johnston has also a PhD from Barcelona University. She's a clinical psychologist and a postdoctoral researcher on the VR per Genera project, where she works on the use of virtual reality for the prevention and the rehabilitation of intimate partner violence. Whenever you want, Tania.
Thank you. Give me just a little second to put the presenter view. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for your presentation. I'm very happy to be here. And today I just wanted to give a little overview of the work we are conducting in the VR per Genera project, where we use virtual reality for prevention and rehabilitation of intimate partner violence. So before we go a bit deeper into this work, let's define first the term. So intimate partner violence is a form of gender-based violence that happens between intimate partners, and that includes physical violence, sexual violence, but also psychological abuse, such as acts of insults, humiliation, threats, and controlling behaviors, such as isolating the person from their social circle, restricting access to financial or educational resources, etc. It has a high prevalence across the world and has multiple determinants that can be at the level of society, but also at the level of the individuals who like perpetrate the violence and also receive or are bystanders of the violence. And prevention of intimate partner violence presents a series of challenges. At the level of assessment that is prone to socially desirable responding. So this is the fact of answering questions or questionnaires in a way one thinks they should answer instead of how they really feel. For example, if you ask most perpetrators of intimate partner violence if they have ever been violent, they will likely respond no, when actually it is yes. And then there are also challenges for the actual prevention and rehabilitation of violence, for which effectiveness of the approaches can still needs to be improved. And in virtual reality, as has been showed before, social situations can be reproduced in controlled and safe conditions. And it also allows experiential learning, because people inside virtual reality tend to respond realistically in terms of emotions, in terms of cognition, and also in terms of behaviors. And people also tend to take the characteristics of the avatar that they are embodied in. And so we wanted to tackle the challenges I mentioned with the use of virtual reality. And so in this context, we are carrying out a European project called VR per Generate. And basically, we aim at using the advantages of virtual reality for 3 goals. First, for rehabilitation with intimate partner violence offenders. So basically, we want to improve rehabilitation strategies with the ultimate goal to reduce recidivism. We also want to use VR for prevention in the general public, and this goes through modifying attitudes towards intimate partner violence and also towards victims, and also enhancing behaviors of people who are there when the violence occurs, so bystanders. And finally, we want to use VR to prevent dating violence. So this is intimate partner violence between young people. And this goes through training assertive responding in situations of dating violence, and also through the modification of attitudes towards dating violence. So I will describe briefly these 3 axes of the work we are doing. So let's start with the axis of rehabilitation. So in the VR per Generate project, we have developed and tested several new virtual reality scenes, but today I will relate the work done mainly with the most studied virtual reality scene, just for matters of time. So I will show you part of the scene that has been used, and then we will go on to the studies. So participants are embodied in the body of a woman and see the scene through that perspective. Here you see the woman.
Eso se va a acabar. ¿Ves el teléfono? ¿Lo ves? A tomar por el culo el teléfono.
Okay, so this is just an abstract. You can see on the site of EventLab the full video if you like. So I will describe 3 founding studies that kind of validated this scene, and then the new work we have conducted. Okay, so the first study was conducted in the general public to validate this scene, and showed that embodiment as the victim being put in the body of the woman, as you saw in the video, engaged participants in the scene. And this was shown through behavioral and physiological responses of stress during the scene. And also that it reduced negative implicit attitudes towards women. So basically it showed that, yes, men can feel in the body of a woman, feel stressed, and it has a good effect on attitude. In offenders in probation, another study showed that embodiment as the victim brought about improvement in emotion recognition, which is a component of empathy. And basically, fMRI studies confirm these findings. While embodied as the woman, as a victim, participants' brain activations suggested an identification with the female body, a perception of threat, and that the first-person perspective, so the fact of seeing the scene from the body of the victim instead of from the perspective of someone who is in the scene but like across the room, impacted emotion recognition network. So, new studies in the VR per Genere project have also used embodiment as the victim in prison perpetrators compared to probation perpetrators. So perpetrators in probation are men who have committed violence and who are sentenced to go to therapy instead of going to prison. So they have less severe profiles than perpetrators in prison. And so we have found that perpetrators in prison also improve their empathic skills after being embodied as the victim, but perpetrators with more severe profiles improve less. And so we ran a study to test whether we could make the scene more stressful, basically, in order to also improve these perpetrators who had more severe profiles. And we found that it's possible to modulate what is perceived inside virtual reality to increase the emotional intensity of the scene. So basically, as Domna was saying also before, virtual reality can be customized to the needs of the perpetrators of violence. Okay. At the level of prevention in the general public now, we have used the same scene, embodiment as the victim, or the view as a spectator of the scene that you can see on this picture. And we have found that from the body of the victim, there was a more intense experience from the perspective of the woman, and a more positive impact on attitudes, basically. Participants who had been in the body of the woman had lower attitudes of victim blaming, which is putting the blame of what happens in an event of violence on the victim instead of on the perpetrator. Also, at the level of prevention and assessment in the general public, we have used embodiment as the bystander of a scene of intimate partner violence. So basically, participants were put in the body. Do you see my mouse?
We do, we do.
Okay, so participants were put in the body of the man here. The man in front of him starts a conversation and exposes his sexist views, basically. Then the wife of this man comes in and a fight starts and escalates from psychological violence to physical violence. And so basically, so do you remember I mentioned that attitudes towards this kind of topic were difficult to measure because of social desirability? So here we tried to overcome this problem by observing the behavior of people when they were confronted to a situation of violence. And we tried to see if they reacted against the violence, if they tried to help the victim. And basically what we found was that social desirability didn't influence helping behavior, and that helping behavior was indeed related to attitudes of acceptability of violence. So basically, we can use virtual reality to implicitly measure through actual reactions inside the virtual reality, psychological concepts that are difficult to measure via questionnaires. So I will skip the prevention in young people because I see I've overpassed my time a little bit, and I will go directly to the conclusions. So basically, to conclude, virtual reality is customizable to the needs of each individual. It can be used to assess and change attitudes, emotions, and behaviors related to gender-based violence. And so it's a great tool for the prevention and rehabilitation of gender-based violence, but also more generally speaking, for conducting research and intervention in social sciences in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tania. That was really, really interesting. I think you are dealing with a very meaningful and necessary topic to deal with. And I'm really happy to hear that technology such as virtual reality that we work with can be helpful to address gender violence. So congratulations for this project. And now I'm gonna ask if someone in the audience has any questions for Tania. Domna.
If no one else, okay. No, I wanted to ask Tania. Thank you, of course, for the presentation. Really nice. Maybe it was part of what you did not show. I was wondering how, because you mentioned prevention quite a bit, other than testing it in in a research context. Where do you see these being applied directly? Who can adopt this for the prevention of gender violence, say? I can't hear you're mute.
Yes. I think that because virtual reality can reproduce social situations in a realistic manner, it can be used in many contexts. For example, in the context of prevention, you can show scenes of dating violence, for example. So teenagers have problems recognizing what is psychological violence. They tend to perceive it as normal. So you could show them scenes of violence and immerse them in these scenes to help them little by little recognize what is a healthy situation and what is an unhealthy situation. And you could like model their reaction through experiencing these reactions, basically. Just an example.
Could it be adopted at school, for example? For instance, I was just wondering, because at this age it would be difficult for say, I don't know, a teenager or an 18-year-old to get this application and just run it at home for fun, right? They're just going to go for the video game.
Yes, in fact, we have been enrolling this type of intervention in schools and also online, where teenagers and young people had to use the intervention by themselves. And in fact, it has been quite well used.
Okay, the metaverse, yeah, to test it. Great, thanks.
Thank you very much. It's now time to close the session. I think today we had the opportunity to hear 3 outstanding projects that are conducting with virtual reality that gave us a very good sense of how we can use virtual reality or study virtual reality from the social sciences and how this can be applied. And I would like to thank again our presenters and congratulations for these amazing projects. And I hope to see you again very soon in new events. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Lara.
Thank you.